and PC versions too, so very useful for people wanting to get the most out of their hardware. To make it even easier for people to use our products in this space, not only have we released MyLT, which is obviously a lower priced offering in general, but we've also now offered the ability to rent our products. And this means that you can scale up your involvement with our toolset over time. So I'll show you what I mean by rental here. So with choice, what we're saying is you can buy a license and you can upgrade it when you feel like it. You can buy a license that's perpetual and you can upgrade it through our subscription program, which just means you get all of the new functionality as and when it's released. Or you can rent it, and you can rent it on like a quarterly or an annual plan. So if you think, okay, I'm only doing a small job, I just need access to 3D tools for a short period of time, you can just rent our product quarterly. You know, very easy to do. If you think that you're only going to do a 3D project, yet you want it to, you know, maybe you're just testing the waters, maybe you're new to 3D, you can just rent for a year, and then maybe you can decide whether it's a good fit and you're going to buy perpetual licenses. So much easier introduction into licensing the technology. So you reduce risk, especially if you're a startup, you're not paying for stuff that you won't necessarily use. It means you can ramp up, you can bring freelancers on, you can bring people in-house just for a couple of months to help you get over the content creation phase. As I say, it's the lowest way of owning our products, and also gives you access to the very latest tool set. So if you're renting our stuff, obviously when you rent, you get the very latest and greatest builds of the product, so you don't have to worry about not having the newest features to hand. So alongside that, I mentioned some consumer products, and these are the MyLT ecosystem. So if you're not a modeler, if you're new to 3D, we've got loads of products that can help you, such as 123D Catch, which is the first icon, top left. This is a photogrammetry product. You take lots of photos of a real-life object, and it gets processed on the cloud very simply. It returns to you a 3D textured model, which you can then obviously bring into LT and either re-topo or start to tweak and change the look of it. 123D Creature for quickly building up monsters, characters that can really enliven your imagination. Very simple to do. Sculpt, Sketchbook, products that run on tablets, enabling you to draw out textures, draw out 3D models without having to even have a full laptop with all the software installed on it. And then we have things like FBX Review, which is the F icon. This enables other people to check out your FBX models, turn them around, look at them, make changes, mark up things. Very good for if you're showcasing a client and he doesn't have any of these apps installed on his laptop. Gameware product line is something we'll move on to in a moment. And Autodesk Labs, which is the last icon there. And Autodesk Labs is a website where you can take a look at some of our technology previews and use the results in production. For an example of something like that, Project Pinocchio is a fully functional character generation system. It's free to use. You can access it through Autodesk Labs. You can use sliders to just quickly change things like genders, race, hair colour, eye colour, what clothes they wear, how tall they are. You can export that out as a direct, rigged, skinned character that you can bring into MyLT and just throw human IK on the top, animating with. You can actually create different poses and vizzings and phonemes and export these out as blend shapes, so you can start to lip sync audio tracks, create a spoken form. Very easy to do, very simple tools, no charge to any of these technologies. So take a look at Autodesk Labs if you get a moment. So I mentioned Gameware just in that previous slide. So Gameware, if you're not familiar with it, and a lot of people aren't, is our portfolio of runtime middleware technologies that traditionally have been baked into the engine that ends up running on a target platform. So Gameware is middleware, and it's designed to work for specific development disciplines. Now traditionally middleware is quite high priced, it's designed for the AAA crowd, but we actually have mobile, casual price points. We have ability to just license, per seat and start to put projects through these immediately, very simply, at very low cost in some cases. And you will find that you shortcut the development process very quickly using these. So Scaleform for user interface design, a very boring, laborious process normally. Human IK, so that IK system you saw running in MyLT, we have a runtime component that enables you to apply all of those effects directly to characters so they can interact with their environment a bit better. Navigation, this is a new AI tool, one of the first to run on the iPhone, the iPad, the Android platforms. So you can have full AI-controlled crowds running towards you, making cover decisions, attacking the character, fleeing. All of that is available to you now as a mobile game developer. And Beast is a global illumination tool that means you can take your entire world and build lighting information into hundreds of objects using a full global illumination system interactively. You get real-time feedback, but you're baking the results just in simple textures. So again, the results can run on a very low-powered device. You're not working out how to have bounced lighting in a runtime environment. All of the information is baked in. So I've got a bit of time here. I'm just going to step through Scaleform as an example. If I have time at the rest of the talk, I'll take some questions about some of the other products. But Scaleform is the one that's probably going to really help you in the immediate vicinity to get a game out onto one of these mobile devices. And I'll explain why this is an important product to highlight. Traditionally, Scaleform is a tool that has made it very easy to develop a rich and compelling user interface. So anything that you see in the UI, from health bars to power to scoring to the initial HUD where you select start game, where you select exit operating system, any UI element can be handled by Scaleform. The reason that you would want to use Scaleform is that it enables you to design all of these UI elements in simple Flash. So you build your UI using vectors in Adobe Flash. You animate those UI elements using the tween timeline or ActionScript. You can create all of the interactivity as a designer using ActionScript 2 or ActionScript 3. So your design team can basically build up a very beautiful looking UI, and then with a simple export process, take this out as to code that can instantly run and function in your game engine. So a very efficient workflow and technology that also runs very efficiently on the platform. Then what we have is a flavor of Scaleform called Scaleform Mobile. So for example, in the video here, you see a tower defense game running. This has just been written in Flash using ActionScript 3 for all of the complexity of the AI system, the spawning, the interactivity, how you go about, dragging characters and selecting things on the screen. But it's all been then thrown into Scaleform and deployed onto the iOS platform. Now, because Scaleform supports every platform available to you as a developer, even Flash-based content can be put into the executable and deployed on the App Store, on Windows Phone, on any device really that wouldn't natively support that Flash game. Similarly, if you're a Unity user and you're struggling to develop a nice UI, you can buy Scaleform for mobile as a series of plugins that you just install into Unity, and all of a sudden your Flash, nice, beautiful designed UI can just be the default UI that you work with in your game from an early stage of developing a Unity product. And this makes it very easy to prototype a game because you can showcase people with a nice, easy to use UI. You can spend a day just building that UI instead of weeks. You can get your designer to use and build the Scaleform system and the UIs rather than letting the programmer build it, and obviously not spend quite as much time designing the look and feel of the elements being used. So why does it work so well and how does it work? Well, Scaleform is a runtime component. It essentially takes the vector graphics that you've exported out of Flash and it turns them into geometry. Now, because it's vectors, they're dead flat. There's no 3D element to them. But because they're turned into triangles, the GPU can pick those up and display them instead of some software library running on the CPU on the device that's already doing a lot of computation. Once it's in that environment, once it's a bit of 3D geometry, you can then start to put it into the scene. You can start to rotate it around. You can take elements and make them animate in and out of the screen. So you get a bit more visual finesse over how that user interface works. It almost looks like you've gone to the effort of building it in a 3D product and tried to build a 3D engine just to animate the UI elements. As you can see, vectors just turned into geometry. Very, very simple process, automated, designed by the system to run as efficiently as possible. Once it's in the system as Scaleform, You can then have very complex UIs such as MMO UIs. This example at the bottom here has over 400 UI elements, which obviously take time to process. Scaleform will look at those elements and it will decide what it can draw in one go. So for example, if it thinks it can draw all the windows with inventory items in it in one go, because they're very similar in size, shape and position, it will do. So anything with a similar colour is being seen by the GPU as a similar item. So this brings down the amount of detail it needs to draw and display by a factor of 4, 5, 10 even, and just reduces the overhead of that GPU to make that UI very simple for it to display and interact with. As you're starting to work with the content, you're building stuff in Flash, you're writing ActionScript, it's going to then obviously have some draw time, some computation time. The AMP profiler is a full debugging system that will just look at your Flash file and tell you whether you've been efficient in the way you've designed it. If you've got some inefficient ActionScript, it will flag it. If you've got some graphics that are using too much RAM and it's an obvious burden on the memory of the GPU, it'll flag that as well. So obviously it's going to help you decide how to efficiently code your UI elements instead of just leaving it up to you to try and guess or work through the documentation. So a very nice visual system. Finally, we have a lot of functionality to enable this all to run on mobile devices as well. So it's not just a console architecture, it's not just a high-end PC that requires the latest AMD or NVIDIA graphics cards to execute. Any mobile device, even low-powered ones such as the PSP, the original 3DS or the original DS, things that from iPhone 2 onwards have all supported Scaleform in some form or another. So low-end devices, the latest devices, they all scale up to use Scaleform content easily. We've just added support for the PS Vita, for the latest Windows 8 environment, so that's Windows RT, for Surface tablets, it's Windows Phone 8, for the Lumia phones that we saw being demoed a little bit earlier. So all of these are supported natively by Scaleform. If you want to do things like 3D depth of field effects, especially on something like the 3DS, where components can literally have a depth value to them, all of that is supported natively by Scaleform. You can make things really stand out to the crowd. You can put a UI essentially into the depth of the viewport. So very nice functionality. And again, if you're developing an iOS or an Android app, you want multi-touch gesture support, again, Scaleform can gear itself up to taking multiple inputs at a time. So all of the little nuances of these mobile devices can all be catered for by this technology. Again, if you think, okay, well, Scaleform sounds great, but this is a lot of work in Flash for me to get a UI up and running, we provide you, even if you evaluate the technology, with the Click component set. So this is a library of about 400 UI elements already supplied to you as easily reskinnable Flash layers. So anything from a radio checkbox to a slider to a resizable window to a complete MMO UI, as you can see up on the right hand side. We provide things like a HUD pack with a working map, a scoring system, a lobby kit to enable you to log into the game, log out of the game, however you want to run it. All of this is available to you as an easy to reskin component set. I've had customers that have spent 2 to 3 months developing all of the UI elements before, get up and running with a working UI using the Click component set in half a day. So it just means that you can start working with these elements quickly. Every item of ActionScript applied is the most efficient ActionScript available to deploy into a game. So again, you don't have to worry about learning the latest ActionScript techniques to get this up and running. And you're welcome to ship your game using the Click component library. There are no royalties, no extra licenses, nothing. You can just create a game. And a lot of my customers I've seen ship a game using the standard UI elements that we supply them as part of this library. So definitely worth checking out. If you're looking at developing a casual game and you're going to deploy it on something like Xbox Live or PlayStation Network, you'll be pleased to know that we also offer a video system as well. So a lot of people want to stream FMV video in the game. Maybe they want to apply video as a texture onto their UI elements to just give it a bit more polish. You know, clips from the game, things that have been created and rendered offline. You know, interactive textures within the game. So let's say you need to create a sequence as a control panel to access a door, something like that. You can do all of this through video, and you can use scaleform video as another component to get this executing in your game. We use the CRI codec, we provide all the tools to create video in that correct format. And it's a very efficient, lightweight way of streaming video. If you're scaling up your ambitions and you want to do an MMO, big countries of MMO origin are Korea, China, Russia, countries that don't support the character sets and the inputs that, you know, the majority of the globe are used to using. So instead of relying on the operating system to draw those items for you, for example, if you've got a chat window that needs to support simplified Chinese, then the IME system will make sure that the operating system draws those in the correct font, in the correct place, in the correct location, using the color scheme that you've dictated in Flash to draw it and make it look correct on screen. It's a very unique and specific case, but it's an incredibly hard thing to do on your own. So again, people doing MMOs, stuff that needs chat support across multiple languages, the IME system is there, and it's going to be your best friend, probably. So the top features, again, why you would want to look at Scaleform. So you've seen my LT, you can create that 3D content, you can animate it, you can bring it into Unity. The thing that most people ignore is the UI, but the one thing that you're going to look at most when playing a game is what your health status is, where the enemy is, what the score is, and it's always on screen. And the more fidelity, the more visual appeal that has, the more likely it is people are going to stick with your game, the more time people think you've spent developing the product as a whole. So having a very tight Flash workflow means that even if you're working with Unity and MyRLT and the lower end tools, you can make your game look like you've spent $1 million developing it. And that's because your designer can do all of the work. He can program it if he's good at ActionScript. Or you can hand the content off to your C++ programmer or your Unity programmer, and he can take control of all of those elements himself. So C++ can drive the animation, the layering, the parallax effects that you're going to need in your game. So very, very fast and flexible. We support everything that Flash supports. So if you want to do a bitmap game using sprites, you're welcome to do that, because Scaleform can take the bitmaps, the bitmap data class in ActionScript, and it can deliver that as a GPU accelerated layer. So very easy. I've seen customers that have had a simplified 3D environment, but Scaleform has been used to animate beautifully at 60 frames a second, hundreds and hundreds of sprite animations, all on the GPU very easily. So you can mix and match how it's working. It's not just a UI tool anymore. It's a multi-threaded system, so the computation of the ActionScript is all handled by the CPU and multiple cores. If you have a new iPhone and it's got lots of GPU systems available to it, then all of that gets scaled up in terms of how the graphics are going to be drawn. We support lots of devices, so you can create the content once as you're working with vectors that then get turned into geometry. You don't have to worry about screen resolutions. So the same UI you're creating for your Xbox Live game can also run on the Windows Phone version with a much smaller screen, for instance. One amount of effort deployed to multiple devices easily. Finally, stuff to call out is things like the AMP profiler. Makes it easy to get efficiency out of this content without really needing to be an ActionScript expert. The Click UI widgets will save you thousands of hours of creating funny little icons to then have to update all the graphics because you've decided the look and feel is going to change. This library of components will be a huge time saver to you, and again you can just evaluate any of this stuff very, very easily. And finally, if you are doing higher end games, if you are looking at console but maybe you're just looking at digital distribution, an easy way of getting games to look good is to get video involved. And the Scaleform video components of the IME system just enables you to really broaden your horizons a bit and target probably a global market that much easier. So This is going to step through other products. This is going to take too long for the time that I have, unfortunately. So I'm not going to worry about these just yet. But what I will do is tell you how you can find out more about these products and how you can start working with them to see if they're a good fit for your production. So let me just jump out of this slideshow. I am going to be around today and tomorrow. I am more than happy to take anyone through some of the other products in the gameware portfolio. But you'll be pleased to know that we have quite a nice website that really should give you answers to all of those questions. So if you go to gameware.autodesk.com, this is essentially a one-stop portal for all things gameware. It will tell you what customers have used it, how they've integrated it into a mobile game to get 60 frames per second flash performance, whereas running it in the Flash player gave them 20 frames a second. Things like that. So just nice use cases of the products, the way people have used Beast to just lift the fidelity of their images right at the last minute of the production cycle. And from here, this is where you would start to work with the technology. So if you see the big green button at the top right, that says Evaluate Products, you can click on that, register your company interest, and you can decide to download a 30-day trial of any of these products. And as soon as that 30-day trial starts, you'll be able to raise technical support questions directly with the development team. There's an active forum to understand how other people have quickly integrated this stuff into different game engines. It'll provide you all of the Unity plugins you need to just get this into your game and test it out on target. So everything is available to you as an evaluator, as it would be a licensee. So there are no restrictions whatsoever. Please make heavy use of those developers, because it's the actual developers of the software that are answering your questions and helping you out. You're not working with a support team that have a general understanding. So you can ask a C++ level question, you can ask them to cut a different build of this to execute correctly for your purposes. And all this kind of stuff is available to you just through the Gameware portal. So that's your first port call. So that's the slides that I wanted to cover. Hopefully it's given you a bit of a clue as to what MyLT is about. Hopefully it's shown you that the tool sets available to you will enable you to very quickly build a 3D asset that's shaded and textured and animated and easy to export into your game engine for a very easy low-end price point. So that's the big thing. And you can talk to me or any of our Indian sales team who are all sat at the front there to get an understanding of the options, the pricing and all the